As today's gospel is about a deaf and mute man, let me ask you a question, very simple question. If you were deaf and mute, how would you ask for a pair of scissors? Like this? And if you were blind, how would you ask for those scissors? Like that? You just ask, can I have a pair of scissors, because you are not mute, just blind. Some years ago, today's gospel is about touching. Jesus touched the ears and the mouth of that man. So let me tell you a certain story. Some years ago, a friend of mine, Aurelio, got married. I couldn't go to his wedding. After about 7 months, I met him at downtown in my hometown by the plaza. And he introduced his wife to me. I greeted her very happily, and touching her belly, I said, "Nice to meet you, and congratulations on your pregnancy." She crossed her arms and said, "I'm not pregnant." Oops, I got mute. I apologize for sure. We learn by making mistakes many times. And I have never done it again. Today's gospel is about Jesus touching to heal. It was a common gesture in the Gentile territory at that time. They also taught that saliva had medical value. So Jesus appears in this gospel both similar and superior to the pagan healers and magicians. They did that, so he did what they were accustomed to. Last week we heard how Jesus was going to Gentile territory, and now he is in those lands, in the region called Decapolis. This passage is unique in the Gospel of Mark. It recalls the hopes of the Israelites returning from exile in Isaiah 35. We just heard it. And on Exodus chapter 4. In the scene, Jesus took off the deaf and mute man by himself. It suggests that Jesus intuitively understands the unique needs of each person. He understands when we have a unique and personal need. He always understands our needs. The miracle that he performed with this man points to the truth of his messianic identity. But it is just part of the truth, as when he performed a miracle for us, that miracle is just part of the truth. The full truth is Jesus himself, the Messiah. That's why we should always look or seek for Jesus himself, not just his miracles. The external incapability of the man to hear and to speak points to his impossibility to communicate. Jesus restores his possibility to communicate with others. It reminds us that Jesus has the power to restore our spiritual deafness and muteness. Maybe today's question for us is, are we suffering a spiritual deafness and muteness? Are we spiritually deaf and mute? Are we communicating effectively with God? Many times we are deaf and we don't listen our hearts. We don't listen the word of God inside of our hearts. How we know that we suffer from spiritual deafness and muteness? If you are unable to listen the voice of God in your heart, if you are unable to listen those feelings and what is happening in the heart of your family members, maybe you have this spiritual illness. If you have been unable to communicate with Him, with the Lord, by your heart, you might suffer this spiritual disability. But there is a good news. Because of the grace of God, now those who are baptized, all of us baptized, we are able to hear God's voice inside of our hearts, and we can proclaim His mighty deeds inside of us. If we are struggling with spiritual death or spiritual muteness, let us approach Jesus. Let us allow Him to touch us, and let Him to tell us to, Epheta, be opened. And then He will open our hearts, and our hearts will be able to listen His voice, and we will be able to speak about Him. By listening His voice and by speaking about Him, we are proclaiming His kingdom. Maybe our family members are waiting for us to open our hearts, to listen their needs, and to speak about our experience of God. Let us allow Jesus to tell us, Epheta, be opened. And our hearts will be open, and all of the world around us will be transformed just by opening our hearts, because the hearts listen the language of the love.